night, because political journalists were just awaiting results throughout the night.
No. Yesterday, we weren't sleeping. We were essentially camping on our cell phones and waiting for those briefings from those National Executive Committee members of the African National Congress. But what came to the fore was that the NEC did reach a decision that those who are charged with fraud, corruption, money laundering, and facing serious charges in South African courts of law, they must step aside within 7 days or face suspension. That was the consensus within the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. And once that consensus was reached, and the ANC then issued out a press release through their Twitter account that the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa would be delivering the closing remarks of the NEC. He then took the NEC into confidence and read the NEC statement for NEC members. When he got to the point of the stepping aside, within 7 days of all those who are charged, we are told that this SG of the ANC then unmuted himself, Ace Magashule, and said he disagrees with the NEC statement. And subsequently, those in support of Magashule then also unmuted themselves, and chaos then ensued within the virtual National Executive Committee, which then prompted a postponement or an adjournment for about 10 to 15 minutes for an urgent officials meeting. And from there, they went back with a proposal with a 14-day adjournment of the National Executive Committee, which was then evidently being rejected by ANC NEC members, which ultimately led to the NEC resolving that they will reconvene this afternoon at 5 o'clock in that all-important NEC meeting. As you see, the president of the ANC and the deputy president of the country as well, they are on their way to Gqeberha as we speak now to one of the pharmaceutical companies of Aspen, their warehouses there to inspect them, and we do hope that our colleagues will try and doorstop President Ramaphosa and Deputy President D.T. Mabuza on the issues of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, and particularly on the stepping aside of the SG of the ANC, which effectively tells you that a war is raging at Luthuli House, and the address of the president is not indefinitely postponed, but it's postponed until the National Executive Committee eventually concludes this afternoon once they deliberate on the issues of step aside and those whom are against it, particularly trying to protect the SG of the ANC, alias Sekgobela Magashule.
Samkele, you mentioned the trip to Gqeberha. Now, ordinarily, this would be a government trip and no political discussions taking place, but it's no ordinary time. And the three of the most important and senior officials of the ANC are on this trip. It's the president, the deputy president, and the health minister. Just if you're a fly on the wall, what kind of conversations are taking place here with regards to the NEC meeting?
It's not just those three leaders of the African National Congress who are there. You've also got a very outspoken provincial chairperson of the Eastern Cape, who's also the Premier, Oscar Mabuyane, who's also going to be there in that trip for the president to Gqeberha. So it's no ordinary day, and I'm one of those journalists who doesn't subscribe that if government calls you out to whatever unveiling that they have, that you can't put in a question or two of the political events of the governing party. It's the only opportunity that you have. You are not there to do their public relations. If they want people to do their public relations, they must hire a PR agency. You are there as journalists to interrogate them on their performance in government, highlights the good that they do, the negatives that are there, the shortcomings, but also if there are political events that can eventually have a negative impact on governance in the country and services to the people, and especially if a governing party is seemingly at war with itself, then why not use that opportunity to ask them about their own internal factions? It's them who said that the president was going to deliver the closing remarks last night. That did not happen due to their own internal squabbles. So we'll use that opportunity in the Eastern Cape if it presents himself to ask them those questions. But we do know that there are those whom like shielding political officials as communicators and don't like having those politicians that they are working with answering those difficult questions. But hopefully we know that these days Didi Mabuza, the Deputy President, is very agile and is willing to take those questions. With President Ramaphosa, I would not say he's not willing, but there are those surrounding him who are seemingly shielding him from accountability in all forms as President of the ANC and as President of the Republic of South Africa. That can't go unabated anymore. He needs to take those difficult questions and answer them, as he had promised that he will always be available to the media fraternity to answer all questions pertaining to government and pertaining to issues of the party that he's leading, which is the African National Congress, which has seemingly failed to implement this step-aside resolution of the 54th National Conference that was taken in December at Nasrec, and which the president said a line in the sand last year in September had been drawn, that all of those who are facing fraud, corruption, and serious charges within the African National Congress must step aside with immediate effect or face suspension. If not, disciplinary measures within the African National Congress would then ensue. That was the president of the ANC in the closing remarks of an NEC meeting of the ANC last year in September, which was addressed by the president of the ANC, and subsequently there was a press briefing afterwards which was addressed by the entire top six of the African National Congress. So it's no ordinary day, and it's not business as usual from our side and from their side, and they will have to pose those questions, particularly with an ANC SG Ace Magashule coming out clearly and unequivocally clear that he disagrees with an ANC NEC statement which was read out by the president yesterday to the National Executive Committee.
It's not the first time that the SG disagrees with the president on very important directions of the ANC. About a week ago, we had a situation where the ANC was saying that in Parliament it will agree with the investigation of the fitness of Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane to hold office. In this instance, the SG was in disagreement, and yet again we see this trend of disagreements amongst the members of the NEC. Give us a sense of, if you were able to pick up from the virtual meeting, the people who agree with the president and the people who are in disagreement, the individuals, especially the influential ones.
It essentially is very clear, and it's crystal clear for any individual to see that you've got the likes of Bongani Thomas Bongo, who will be in support of Ace Magashule, the likes of Tony Yengeni, Uhlati, they will be in support of the SG, the likes of Thandema Hambe-Hlala, they will be firmly in the corner of the Secretary-General, the likes of Mosebenzi Zwane, the likes of Faith Mutambi, they will be in that corner of the ANC Secretary-General. You look at the 61 ANC MPs who were unavailable, who did not vote in favor of the motion of inquiry, further inquiry into the fitness to hold office of Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, the public protector, and may her mother rest in peace, who passed away over the weekend. It essentially tells you that there is a war raging at Luthuli House. And you look at that interview that the SG had in KwaZulu-Natal with one of the commercial provincial regional radio stations, Gagasi FM, with Alex Mtiane, where he said that those ANC MPs who did not vote with the opposition, they were protecting the African National Congress, as you cannot vote with the enemy. And many ANC leaders have said that post-1994, the ANC in its own strategy and tactics document had to review and reorganize and relook at the issue of who is the enemy in a democratic dispensation, as you are no longer within the apartheid era fighting oppression, and your issues of enemies and those whom you can work with in building a developmental state, you do not characterize them as enemies. For instance, that is what is stated in the ANC strategy and tactics document that many ANC leaders today have seemingly forgotten about. And it's one ANC policy guru in the likes of Joel Nachitenze in the past week who's gone back and reminded ANC members of the strategy and tactics document of the African National Congress, and particularly looking at the prestige of the ANC caliber leader and caliber of leaders that have held the Secretary-General's office, and saying that the SG of the ANC is on a day-to-day basis continuously acting against the African National Congress. You've had Lula Mandugai Toby within the Eastern Cape, the provincial secretary of that province, who said it's like there is an organization within an organization currently in the ANC operating at the 6th floor at the SGO office, which is the minority faction that is seemingly aligned to Elias Secretary-General Magashule, the SG of the ANC, and the former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma. You've had the likes of former President Mbeki, who was saying that the SGO office of the ANC is at its weakest in history, and that it's very weak. You can no longer compare it to the likes of the times that office was held by the likes of esteemed leaders of the African National Congress like Dumanokwe, like Alfred Nzo, and going into the history of the SGO office of the ANC and the important role that it's played in shaping the political perspective of the ANC within the broader body politic of South Africa and international politics as well. So it tells you that the ANC SG was facing an onslaught over the weekend from those who are aligned to the president. For instance, you've got the likes of David Masondo, ANC NEC member. You've got the likes of the General Secretary of the SACP, Bladen Zemande, the likes of Ronald Lamula, the likes of Oscar Mabuyane Lula Mangurei, the likes of Soviet Lechanyane, the Provincial Secretary of the ANC in Limpopo, whom were betting for the ANC in that NEC, and the likes of Endi Motshekga, Motelo Motshekga, and the likes of the Minister of Home Affairs in the country.
Samkele, I'm going to have to, technology helped us cut out of that conversation, but time was against us in any case. But let's go to this story live now. Police Minister